Alright, so I know that you're probably sick of hearing about the major winter storm that is coming to southern Indiana, southern Ohio, and areas to the west and to the east. But that's exactly what we're talking about here. It is going to be a pretty significant storm, so let's talk about it a little bit more. The time is 5:36 p.m., and it is January 4th. Welcome to another update from Great Lakes Weather. We're upping our wording about this storm just a little bit because now we're pretty confident that it is going to have some pretty significant impacts to portions of southern Indiana, southern Ohio. Definitely going to want to prepare for this one in advance. It looks like it's going to drop quite a bit of snow, and particularly for southern Indiana, you will likely see the potential for some freezing rain and then some winds on the backside, which will likely lead to power outages for portions of that area. Okay, so this is something you're going to want to keep in mind. But there's going to be some heavy snow and ice. Some places will receive more than a foot of snow, most likely, across portions of Indiana and Ohio. We're going to talk about exactly who's going to see that, and also talk about the model variabilities that still exist. The high-resolution models are kind of going on the higher trend in terms of snowfall. So we're going to talk about that, but you can see some of the key messages here for the January 4th or 6th winter storm. This is right from the National Weather Service. This is publicly available. You can check it out on their website. Again, disruptive major winter storm through Monday, starting in Kansas and Missouri. Probably going to have some blizzard-like conditions out there. You can see on this graphic here that there is a blizzard warning for much of Kansas and portions of northern Missouri. And the wind will probably continue with this as it moves further to the east, but it's not going to be strong enough to produce that blizzard, I guess, category. But there still will be some wind gusts of up to 35, maybe 40 miles per hour at times. But it's still going to have that impact in regards to that. But there's going to be a long swath of heavy snow from Missouri all the way to Maryland. So a lot of places along the Ohio Valley and lower Great Lakes will be affected by that. And then the damaging ice. That's the thing that I'm more concerned about, particularly for portions of southern Illinois and southern Indiana. Because if you get the combination of places that could exceed half an inch of ice, in addition to the wind that comes through, that's likely going to lead to some power outages. So you're going to want to prepare for that, especially if you're in the areas highlighted under that ice storm warning, or just to the north of that with that winter storm warning. I would say southern Indiana could see some pretty significant icing with this, along with the already existing potential for snow. So we're going to talk about the models here because we have seen a little bit of an uptrend with regards to the snowfall totals. However, there's still some variabilities that are present with this that will significantly alter the potential for some spots. So again, winter storm warning is currently in effect for much of Indiana, much of Ohio with this. Winter weather advisory extend up towards just south of Fort Wayne and south of Van Wert areas. And then they have winter storm watches out for portions of the East Coast, including Delaware and much of Maryland, which again, you guys are still going to be under the gun for that snow as well. And then you can see the winter storm severity index that they have put out here. Notice southern Indiana is under a extreme impact level. And again, that's likely due to the fact that you're going to have a combination of heavy snow and ice and the potential for some power outages with the winds that come through associated with this. So if you live in that area, you're going to want to prepare for this, okay? They don't usually produce that extreme impacts category unless they're pretty certain there's going to be some pretty significant impacts to your daily life associated with this winter storm. So let's talk about this real quick. Okay, we're going to backtrack to where we are at right now. We have the storm initializing. I'm starting to draw off that Gulf moisture as it makes its way to the east. It's starting to initialize over Kansas, and you can see that there's freezing rain that's going to likely be associated with that initial startup too. Again, you can kind of see the temperature gradient from the surface. You have temperatures in the 20s, and you have a warming trend as you go a little bit higher in the atmosphere. Your dendritic growth zone is pretty far up in the atmosphere, so it might take a little of some time for that precip to develop and fall, but still at the same time, you can see that the pattern is there for freezing rain, and that's kind of what's being depicted by the models. But as it continues to draw off that Gulf moisture and the low continues to deepen, you'll start to see those isobars get tighter. That's what's going to bring your stronger wind potential also with this on the northern fringe, and it's going to be probably an east wind because it's wrapping around in that counterclockwise motion, and it's going to progress through with that snow continuing to develop and get heavy as it gets into that colder air and it starts to precipitate on the northern fringe of that low pressure system. So that's what you're seeing there. You can see the shades of purple and pink. Again, purple is associated with wintry mix. A wintry mix appears probable still. There's probably going to be some places that see snow, and then there's probably places going to see ice, freezing rain, kind of combination of all of those within that purple zone. So, and you can see that it's kind of shifted a little bit further to the south, and it's also going to hit Kentucky with some snowfall as well. And as we continue to move forward, you can see that there's a transition to freezing rain a little bit on the southern front, purely just freezing rain, and that wintry mix is still on the backside. That purple is what that's associated with, but you can see the long strand of that snow that is going to be on the northern fringe of this. There's your center of low pressure right there. Again, your Gulf moisture is being drawn into this low pressure system, and as it gets on that colder side, the precipitation begins to develop and sort of get heavier as it moves in that direction, and then it wraps around on the backside too as you get into that colder air behind it. So as this low moves through, you can see the heavy snow really sticks around across portions of southern Ohio, central Indiana. Southern Indiana is getting slammed by that wintry mix that could also have some freezing rain and ice accumulation potential on the southern fringe. And progressing it forward, you can see that it looks like it continues even as we start to get on the back side of this into Monday. This is midnight on Monday. You can see that it also lifts a little bit further to the north potentially as well, brings some snow to portions of northwest Ohio, northern Indiana. The freezing rain settles still to the south in southern Indiana, southern Ohio as well. And again, there's still a chance that this could shift a little bit to the north, a little bit to the south from this point on. But as you can see, by the time we get to Monday, early afternoon, things start to wind down a little bit, just a little bit of lighter snow on the backside. There will still be some winds on the backside of this too, so you're going to want to keep that in mind. It'll shift from an east wind to a south wind, or not south wind, a north wind. So that's going to kind of alter how things, well, I guess the potential for power outages, if you think about it, across portions of Illinois, southern Indiana. Places that see a lot of freezing rain are more susceptible to those power outages. So I'm going to want to keep that in mind as this storm does move through. But again, you can kind of see the scope of this storm. On the southern fringe, you may have potential for some severe weather, including tornadoes. That's in the Dixie Alley area, way far to the south of where we're at. Right now we're focusing on Indiana and Ohio. But you can see heavy snow is likely in this situation. And you can see also that at the surface of this sounding here, temperatures are in the 20s. But again, the temperatures gradually cool below freezing fast enough to where you start to see more along the lines of snow down in portions of that area. But as you go further to the south where that wintry mix is falling, that freezing rain, you can see that it's there's quite a change in the temperature gradient there. You have a quick melting of the snow that forms in that generated growth zone, and then it starts to become super cooled water droplets that will hit the ground and quickly freeze over on surfaces due to the rapid change in temperature that occurs there. So again, I'm talking about this with a little bit of strong wording, I guess you could say, but it is worth it. This is kind of a storm that is going to be quite impactful, and southern Indiana, southern Ohio, I really don't think has seen a storm like this in a long time. So it's good to kind of keep checks on it, and I know people from Cedarville are probably watching this, and parents from Cedarville are probably watching this, because Cedarville is right here, and Cedarville's mainly going to see snow with regards to this system, but there might be the chance of a little bit of wintry mix and some freezing rain that occurs with this as well. So I know that the dorms down at Cedarville University have already opened, so it's good to kind of get there early before this storm does hit, because it's going to be a doozy, a real doozy. All right, let's talk about snow accumulations. Again, there are many different models for snow accumulation, so we're going to go over quite a few of them. And again, models are not always going to be should not be taken at face value, okay? Because again, there are differences, and honestly, looking at the models, there are quite a few significant differences that could alter who's going to see what. But this is the HRRR model, the high resolution model. You can see that there is a large swath of greater than a foot of snow across portions of central Indiana, central Illinois, southern Ohio, and you can see that even some places in central Indiana are getting close to 2 feet. Which again, is that going to happen? We'll have to see how things pan out. I think you're probably going to see a little bit less than that. And in fact, if you look at the NWS blend, which usually does a better job here, let me actually pull that up real quick. I like the NWS blend, but the NWS blend actually plays it a little bit less, which again, probably a better estimate is this situation right here, where you got 6 to 10 inches of snow. Not gonna lie though, the models have been uptrending with snow as of late. So HRRR, that is a little bit of an extreme in regards to the HRRR. We'll have to see if that pans out. But you can see that there's a potential for quite a bit of snow, or just a little bit of snow. So the NWS is probably going to follow with their potential for 6 to 9 inches of snow. And then you have the HRRR that kind of goes a little bit bullish on that potential for heavier snow accumulations with this system. That's a fast rate of snow falling, again, if it's going to fall in roughly 36 hours, I guess you could say. So it's something to keep in mind. But all the other models are kind of putting out differences with regards to where the snow is going to fall. Again, places in the HRRR that are showing, oh boy, we're going to get 14 inches of snow on this model only 4 inches of snow. Okay, so again, these model variabilities are kind of accounted for because the positioning of this system and where the main brunt of the snow is going to fall still lies in a little bit of question. Okay, that's why winter storm warnings are pretty broad for this storm, because some places are looking a little bit different than others. Okay, and that's the thing you gotta keep in mind with models. If you see a picture of one model run like this one, where you have, oh boy, 26 inches just south of Indianapolis. Well, look at this one. That only shows 6 to 9 inches of snow. So again, coming into question is who exactly is right, and the truth is there's not a certainty on who is. But this model run right here, the NWS blend, and that's the one that the National Weather Service usually goes with, depicts kind of a rough estimate based on all of the data they have, and it inputs it, and then gives you this rough idea here of, okay, there's probably going to be 6 to 10 inches of snow in this area. So that's probably what I'd go for too. I would say maybe 8 to 14 inches in this area. That's probably my rough estimate, and I mean, if I get it right, well, then that's cool. If it goes way over that, well, have fun digging tunnels, because that's a lot of snow. So, southern Indiana, southern Ohio, definitely going to watch for that. That is not the only thing that is of a concern with this system too. One thing that is to be concerned is the ice. Ice accumulation potential, I think, is going to have a lot more danger in regards to some that will be impacted by the system. And look at that. Southern Indiana, you are going to be getting quite a bit of ice potentially based on the NWS blend. You can see that it's greater than a 1/4 inch of ice in southern Indiana. Southern Illinois almost gets close to a 1/2 inch of ice. And then the HRRR, compared to the HRRR, there is a thick setup for maybe even greater than 1/2 inch of ice, maybe even 3/4 inch of ice. That weighs down on the power lines quite heavily, and that could cause some pretty significant impacts. And you can kind of see where the line ends here. South Indianapolis and area southward, you get about 1/10 inch of ice, and then it doesn't really makes it just barely up to the Cedarville area with a few hundredths of an inch of ice. So again, that's not too much, but the snowfall accumulation will still probably create very slick travel, almost very difficult travel. Obviously, it doesn't really go without saying that it's not a good idea to be driving on the roads during this winter storm. I actually remember driving through a winter storm on the way back from Ohio one time that was similar to this one, and we had 18 inches of snow on the ground at my house by the time we got back, and I was like, wow, that fell really fast because that snow just started. So, and it's possible that that could be the case. Now, one other thing I mentioned with this is the wind. You can see as we go forward with this, the wind does pick up with this system on the northern flank of it as it moves through, and then you can see wind gusts getting close to 45 miles per hour in some spots with this. Okay, so if you get a sounding of this that's going of this point, you can see that there's a strong east wind that's blowing, and on the back side of that low, you can see that there's wind on the back side that goes from north to south, and then as that picks up, places that have seen icing could possibly have some power outages. And interestingly enough, it's possible, in fact, I want to look at that in the model real quick. It's possible that there could be some lake effect snow into portions of Chicago, which is interesting because you usually see the lake effect snow coming on the backside, but with that northeast breeze, some places on the east coast of Wisconsin and the east coast of Illinois could see some lake effect snow on the backside of the system. So it's kind of a broad scope in places that are getting the storm that don't even apply to the major brunt of what is coming. But that's kind of the key messages I have for this winter storm. So again, major winter storm coming, southern Indiana, southern Ohio. You are on target for this, okay? It could be shifting to the north, shifting to the south. Like I said, there is still variability with the models. The consistency is that this area is going to see the brunt of the heavier snow, and it could exceed what is currently being projected based on a few of the models that are showing it. But I really think these numbers are a little bit overdone. It's probably going to be more along the lines of what the NWS blend suggests, with the potential for, let's pull this up, 6 to 10 inches of snow. That's a better estimate in my personal opinion. Now, let's go into the further range, I guess you could say, the longer range, which again, kind of we want to go with a little bit of grain of salt as we talk about that. But progressing forward, a little bit of lake effect snow on the back side of the system for Tuesday and Wednesday, probably across portions of western Michigan. Temperatures will still remain cold, might even drop down to the teens in some points. So again, That might interact with the roads a little bit. And then Friday is starting to look a little bit more interesting. We do have a system coming up from the southwest to northeast, and it looks like it could bring even more snow to places that have already seen quite a bit in Indiana and Ohio. And then also Michigan might be on tap to receive some of this as well. Now, this is still a little bit farther out, so we do want to keep that in mind because it's not a guarantee that we see that. And then return to lake effect snow again. Winter is here, and it's going to stick around for quite a couple weeks. Again, I'm liking the sound of a nice cold winter, but with all these winter storms coming through, some people are going to just wait for it to be over. I can definitely understand that. So let's freeze frame it at right when this system on Friday passes through. And again, looking at the total snowfall here, take it with a grain of salt, because it is very easily going to change as we get closer. This storm might shift quite significantly over the next period of time. So let's go to 24-hour snowfall here. Again, it's not really looking too impactful as of yet, maybe 2 to 4 inches of snow. It'll just clip the Great Lakes region as it moves northeast, but still widespread 2 to 4 inches of snow. And if it's a wet snow, it can still mean slick roads as we get to it. So that's looking in the longer range. And one other thing I want to touch on is the potential for significant northern lights, which, again, when I say significant, be careful with that yet, because we don't even know if the CMEs have been directed in our direction yet. But it looks like there's been a couple CMEs that have been directed towards us. You can see the data for the northern lights, which again, we watch this when we are looking at the potential for aurora. And you can see that some of the variables, these are all the variables that are in consideration, which again, they don't always guarantee northern lights will reach down to portions of the lower Great Lakes region or even the upper Great Lakes region. But potential is there with a little bit of clearing that we could see northern lights over the course of next week, mainly because of a sunspot that we are looking at, sunspot 3947. Okay, 3947 is one that's been being watched for a little bit, and you can see that it has been producing a series of different flares. You have the M-class flares, you have C-class flares. So C-class flares are the lower ones. M-class flares are the higher ones, then X-class is usually the highest form of a solar flare. And you can see that recently today, we've had an X-class 1.8 solar flare, and that was earlier this morning. And over the past 72 hours, the same sunspot has been producing other X-class flares. Like going back to yesterday, early morning, we had an X-class 1.21. We had an X-class 1.1 right before January 4th, right before today began. And then we also had another X-class flare. Now, the big thing we got to watch now is, has this thing produced any CMEs, and are those CMEs Earth-directed? Because the coronal mass ejection is just a shot of energy and protons and multiple other pieces heading towards Earth or towards other places, which it may not have been Earth-directed. So that's something we got to keep in mind. Again, this is still an evolving study in my own mind, but I've been following it for quite a while now. You guys have seen some of the videos of where I intercept some of these aurora events, and right now during the time of solar maximum that the sun's in, it's good to keep watch on the potential for northern lights in these areas. So that's what we're watching out for at this current moment. Next week, maybe it's the potential for some northern lights. So with the winter storm that's coming through, and the potential for more snow later on next week, and the potential for northern lights, there's a lot happening that we may not even realize. Make sure to subscribe to stay updated. I will try to provide updates as needed for even potentially this winter storm, future winter storms, as well as when spring season comes around, tornado season comes back. If you heard on my live stream yesterday, I'm predicting 13 tornadoes for Michigan. That is literally based on no knowledge that I currently have. I haven't really done any research into it, but that's my prediction. We'll see what happens. Thanks for watching, everybody. Stay safe during this storm. See you all later.